1 out of 7 Americans are unsure of where their next meal will come from. At the same time, we waste 40% of all edible food. Now remember, food waste not only squanders nourishment that could feed people, but also the resources that it took to grow that food. For example, in the last year, 21% of all fresh water went to irrigate crops that were never eaten. Concurrently, food waste is a massive environmental concern. If its emissions were to be aggregated and measured as a country, food waste would be the 3rd greatest contributor of greenhouse gases, right after the US and China. Now, I think it's clear to a lot of us that food waste is the dumbest social and environmental problem of our day, and thankfully, businesses, governments, people like us have come together in the last years to solve it. I'm here because with my partner, Jordan Schwartz, we created one of those businesses that sees the food waste problem as an opportunity to do well by doing good. And I'm here with you to share our story from underage homebrewers baking loaves of bread in a fraternity kitchen to the global arena. My goal is for you to feel inspired to look out in the world and find an area that you can make a difference and take action and live with passion. Now, the company that we started is called Regrained, and my shirt should give you a little bit of an idea of what we do. There's a quick poll of the audience. Who's ever had a beer? Be honest. All right, now keep your hand up if you've ever eaten a beer. Nice, a few of you. Very good. Now, we started this business that has to do with food waste, but that 40% number completely overlooks a lot of edible byproducts. In our case, we're obsessed with beer waste. Now, I know what you're thinking. And no, we're not talking about those wounded soldiers that are left behind the morning after a party. What we're talking about is the highly nutritious, incredibly delicious food that is created during the beer brewing process, but left behind. You see, it takes massive amounts of grain to brew beer, approximately 1 pound of grain per 6-pack, and there is no way to brew beer without using this grain, yet only the sugars from the grain are needed to make beer. All the protein, the fiber, the micronutrients, those are left behind. Now, this is a photo that we took outside of a single brewery in a single day. Now, there are dozens of these breweries in every city around the world. At Regrained, we have invented a way of rescuing this nutrition and turning it into what is a highly versatile grain blend that performs incredibly well across food applications. In essence, we've created a new kind of flour. Now, some of you may have heard that beer is liquid bread. What I'm here to tell you is that the leftovers from beer can be turned into a whole lot of bread. This is going to blow your mind. If we took a year's worth of grain from the nearly 6 billion gallons of beer that we consumed in the last year, yes, we drink 6 billion gallons of beer a year, and we regrained it into our flour, we could create enough bread so that every American could have 34 loaves. Or to put it in sweeter terms, for all you math nerds, that's 1,362 cookies, give or take a few, for every American. Regrained is a sustainable food brand built around upcycling this super grain that's left behind by the beer brewing process. We've started with a line of snack bars, and we're going so much further. This is the circular economy for food, or as we like to call it, edible upcycling. Now, the awesome thing about upcycling is that it takes a look at our planet's resources and tries to get them to the highest possible use. In the case of edible upcycling, we're looking at our favorite food and beverage products and taking what those processes may leave behind and creating more food. Now, with our technology and products, we are elevating the secret edible powerhouse that's left behind by the beer brewing process to the hero status that it deserves. We're closing the loop between the brewing industry and the food system, and if we're successful, we'll upcycle billions of pounds of food. We're here to create a new environmental and economic standard that makes the right thing of how to handle this waste, or would-be waste, the easy thing. But the craziest part of all is that if you had asked me this 6 years ago when I was at UCLA, I wouldn't have told you any of this. Back then and still today, Jordan and I were two buddies united by a passion for entrepreneurship, for sustainability, for food, and for beer. And we stumbled upon an idea, and we took one small step after another. And we had so much fun tinkering with Regrand that it's now a passion that we share as a full-time venture with a team of 8. We've had the privilege of launching a brand that's moving into national distribution, and we're in discussions with some of the world's largest food and beverage companies to explore partnerships. It also blows my mind that we have literally invented technology with the USDA that we're filing patents on. And we've had the fortune of being able to tell our story to millions as food waste thought leaders, thanks to global media coverage and platforms like TED. Today, we are living the dream of pursuing our passions, and I am assured by some very smart people that it'll be a 6-year overnight success. The thing is that Regreen may no longer be a hobby. We truly have evolved a lot, but the key is that we're still having just as much fun. By starting as recreational entrepreneurs, we took a vision and fueled it with our passion, and over time, we have earned the ability to professionally pursue this opportunity to make the world a better place. Now, some of you may have seen this video before, and I'm here to tell you that this is a party that everyone is invited to. The thing is that there's no invitation, there's no map, there's no instructions as to how to get there, and you're guaranteed to be the first one to show up. But if you have the courage to stay stoked, it will either build into something bigger than it was when it started, or worst case scenario, you might just lose yourself to the music and have a great time. There's no way to know exactly where you'll end up when you started. My goal is to convince you to not wait for an invitation that will never come, but to start the party yourself. You might not know what you're doing when you're doing it, but isn't that true with any pursuit? Just like our friend here, you might have some first adopters that will come, a team of believers, people that are with you, that want to see this be successful, and together you'll create so much buzz, so much enthusiasm, that it might just build into a movement. And that's all to say, do not let uncertainty get in the way of taking action to block you from pursuing your passions. The most important thing that you can do is to enjoy the process, or you will surely burn out before you even get started. Okay, I get it. Maybe you don't fancy dancing. That's okay. Maybe you prefer cards. It's human nature to want this to be as easy as this Cards Against Humanity prompt. Instead, I'd like to offer a framework, an idea that you use recreational entrepreneurship as a launch pad. Because the best part is that if your business or whatever it is that you happen to pursue never takes off, if you're loving what you're doing and still having fun, you can still make a difference and have an impact on your own. So, at the end of the day, it all starts with at the beginning of the day, actually, it all starts with an idea. People ask us all the time how we came up with ours, and I have the absolute privilege of being able to say, well, beer. As the story goes, as undergraduates, Jordan and I took to home brewing our own beer, which is a hobby that our mothers were just as thrilled with as we were. Now, every time we made a batch of beer, we were left with pounds and pounds of this grain. It felt that we weren't just making beer, that we were making food, but we didn't have anything to do with the food besides throw it away. We certainly didn't have farm animals. We didn't have compost. All we had was the dump. But you know what we realized we had in bountiful supply? Some might be in here in the room. We had party animals. And they're hungry. And we thought that if we could bake loaves of bread, maybe we could sell them on campus. Our original vision was literally to sell enough loaves of bread that we just might be able to brew beer for free. Now, I know what you're thinking. This isn't exactly as altruistic as that big worldly vision I laid out earlier. Forgive me. But at scale, what we're doing is we're looking to build a platform between the brewing industry and the food system. And if we're successful, Regrain Supergrain should be able to be found in every aisle of the grocery store, both as our products and as a signature ingredient in others. From savory to sweet, we continue to be blown away by how versatile and delicious our grain is. But the best part of all is that every product that we come up with, every partnership that we strike, every sale that we generate, sure, it helps us grow our business, and this is crucial, but it also brings us one step closer to our mission. We're simultaneously reducing waste and feeding people. The point here is that it's impossible to know where your great idea will end up, but it is easy to know where it starts. So keep your eyes open, keep your heart open, recognize when that moment is happening to you and take action. You got to do something about it. And along the way, you can hold your vision subject to improvement, just like we did, and still stay true to the core of your mission. The core of our mission has always been to creatively upcycle waste. Over time, we've just allowed our means to evolve. So next, and more important than coming up with an idea, is taking action on it. The hardest part is going from 0 to 1. And at the outset, all you'll have to invest in your idea is emotional currency, your passion. Look how stoked we are to be hand-making granola bars in a home kitchen. At the time, we'd be doing farmers markets, things like that. People would tell us, man, your idea, it tastes like a good idea. Just not really what you want to hear when you're making food. But all that we heard was, keep going, dudes, you're onto something. And we kept pushing forward. Equally important is to engage your community early. You're not at this alone. Ask your friends for advice. Find experts to give you feedback. Surround yourself with advisors. When people are in a position to help, we've found that they often are. You just have to bring yourself to ask. Now, to be sure, there'll be many obstacles ahead, but you won't have the opportunity to address any of them if you never get going. For us, one that we came up against was this idea of appealing to tradition. This is the concept of, oh, this is such a good idea, someone would have already done this before. Therefore, your idea, well, that idea won't work. In our case, they'd say to us, if turning beer waste into food was a good idea, wouldn't we see Beerios on the shelf already? This line of thinking is so comfortable for people, but it's completely wrong, and you can't be discouraged on it. We knew that turning this stuff into food was a good idea, but we never argued it was an original one. We only started baking bread because we found a community of homebrewers online that had a rich history of doing the same, and that brew pubs all across the country had been making pizza dough and burger buns and all kinds of things. Just no one had tried to tackle it in this way. But still, why? And got ahead of myself. Actually, we got to go way back, because the concept of waste itself predates human understanding entirely. What you see here is a nurse log. It's a dead tree. It creates the fertile conditions for new growth in the forest, and it's one of my favorite examples of the fact that in nature there is no waste. Food waste itself is a byproduct of the industrialization of the food system. We're simply trying to do for beer what whey once did for cheese, what broth did for bones, what sausage does for less desirable cuts of meat. But still, why hasn't anyone done this? Rather than be duped by the appeal to tradition, instead, we tried to define those reasons and use them as goalposts to define bits of our path forward. And I'll share with you a little bit of what we found. The first thing was timing. When we came up with this concept, craft beer was just beginning to boom. Now we have more than 2 new breweries opening per day, many in cities. And the thing is that an urban brewer faces unique urban challenges. Number 2, sufficient technology, infrastructure. It didn't exist. This stuff is wet, it's heavy, it's unstable, and processing it into food required innovation. Third, a market for products made with this new ingredient wasn't just unproven, it didn't exist at all. This stuff is so far from being considered food that it's actually technically called spent grain. So we saw an opportunity to build a brand, to educate the world. about how incredible this super grain really is. So even though we figured out fairly early what we had to do, that's not to say that we always knew exactly how we would do it. This can be unsettling, but it's totally to be expected. You have to embrace the process and trust that you will get through. The process is totally dynamic, and all day, every day, you will find yourself making real-time decisions with imperfect information. And when you're in the moment, this can feel frenetic, stressful, scary. Turns out it's actually pretty fun. And when you take a step back, there's nothing more meaningful, nothing more fulfilling than putting your heart into something that you know matters. Now, back to Cards Against Humanity. We're still in the middle of this journey, but I'd like to offer a few reasons why I think that we've been able to grow from recreational entrepreneurs to where we are today, in the hopes that these are something that you can take away. First, we recognized that we had an idea that could make the world a better place, and we took action on it. We didn't know exactly how we would see our vision through, but we weren't afraid to learn by doing, to take 2 steps forward, even if we had to take a half step back or a full step back, sometimes 2 steps back. We didn't let perfection get in the way of progress. We embraced both success and failure and tried to learn from both. Number 2, we held ourselves subject to improvement. If your idea is good, others will follow. Competitors will emerge. Now, you have to be the best, and these followers should be validation that you're really onto something and keep you from resting on your laurels. It's certainly how we see it. As we've been holding ourselves subject to improvement internally, we've also sought input from others, advice. We're not in a silo. It's not us against the world. We seek to make the world a better place, and we recognize that we're going to be a lot more successful in accomplishing that if we bring others in. Third, we have fun. We get to eat beer on a t-shirt. We get to have board meetings on ski chairs. We get to have business meetings in breweries. We get to rally a team around a cause. Just like with bicycling, you got to enjoy the process. It's not about the destination. It's about enjoying time in the saddle and pushing the pedals and just looking around and enjoying it. So please, get out there and do it. Take action on your ideas. Do it because you love it and because the world needs it, because you believe in yourself and your ability to pull it off. You do not have to start a business to build a career, a life of lasting, meaningful value. Focus on what matters. And most importantly, please, don't be afraid to want to have your beer and eat it too. Cheers and thank you.